Wax on, right hand. Wax off, left hand. Wax on, wax off. Breathe in through nose, out the mouth.
I'm Zach Bennett. I was born in 1981, but somehow I missed out on seeing the greatest movies of the 1980s. So I'm fixing that. I'm gonna watch these great films and talk about them with my friends who have loved them for decades. This is Videoblivious. Episode 3, 1984's The Karate Kid.
My guest this time around is Steve Reinker. Steve, hi.
Howdy.
How you doing?
Man, I'm great. This is cool. I've listened to the first 2 episodes, and I'm excited to be on number 3.
Good. Well, we're going to talk about The Karate Kid here in just a few minutes. A movie that I only saw about 36 hours ago for the very first time. Yeah, I'm 42 years old. It's 2023, and I'm just now seeing this movie that came out in 1984.
84. Oh my goodness, that's such a long time ago at this point.
So, how old are you?
I am going to be 45 next month.
Okay.
So,
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Ahead of time.
Yeah, I'm a child of the 70s, barely. I was born in the first month of 79, but still,
So you have a legitimate claim to Generation X that even I don't.
Yeah.
Because everybody says I was born in 81, so I'm an elder millennial, but I'm like, I'm really half and half. I've got some millennial side, I've got some Gen X side, but I fall on the actual millennial side of the line. You and I are not that far apart in age, but you fall on the Gen X side of the line, so I'm slightly jealous of you.
Yeah. Yeah, we're getting old and crotchety now.
I want to be Gen X so bad, but I'm justifying as much as I can. So
you can be an honorary member.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So where did you grow up? And did you have any siblings or things like that?
I say I grew up in Michigan because I spent most of my adolescent life in Michigan. Moved there from Pennsylvania when I was 7. Both my younger sisters, born in Pennsylvania. We moved to Michigan when I was 7. My dad was in the Navy at the time. Never served on a ship. He was actually in aircraft maintenance. And so we ended up going to this Air National Guard base in Michigan I'd say about 45 minutes northeast of Detroit, and was there until I was 14. So up to that point, I was a Navy brat. All the stuff that I was interested in, was military, Navy, and so I grew up around all of the kind of things that you would think an 80s kid would grow up around, as far as like the machismo and just men were men in the military, and so.
So you saw Top Gun very early in life.
Oh, I saw Top Gun, and it's been my favorite movie ever since. I mean, when we first moved to the base, we lived in apartments. There was the main road onto the base, and then there was train tracks and a little bit of wooded area. And right beyond the wooded area, you couldn't see the runway, but the main runway on the base was just beyond that wooded area, so you could always see aircraft taking off and landing right there. Very cool. I saw it out my bedroom window.
Well, unfortunately Top Gun's not on my list for Videoblivious because I saw it last year for the first time. Literally last year. I mean, that's how far behind I am.
So it just missed the cut, basically.
Basically, it just missed the cut. I mean, we could still talk about it. I could still do an episode on it for somebody who's only seen it recently, but now I've seen it several times. I saw it in advance, like the day before I saw Maverick. So I saw the original and then Top Gun Maverick on back-to-back days for the first time. So I got really into it for about a week, and then I was kind of over it.
Yeah. Well, that was about 3 years after The Karate Kid.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
What, you mean the original?
Top Gun.
Yeah, it was 86 or 87.
86 or 87. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so
Karate Kid, though.
Let's
get
Kid,
there. By the way, how do we know each other? We've been best friends now for what, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, I would say our friendship really kind of took off probably right right as we're coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah, it really did.
But we've known each other since 17, I think.
I think so.
You and your wife were helping me and my wife navigate some financial classes we were teaching at our church. And so that's how we originally got to know each other. And it was smattering of, seeing each other until about, I would say, well, you invited me to a men's group. In spring of 21, I think it was.
Yeah.
And so that's when our friendship took off. We went to a bunch of baseball games together. And by the way, for anyone who cares, I'm undefeated for the home team down there. So
he goes with me to Braves games, and every time we've gone together, like 9 or 10 times now, the Braves have won every game. So you're my good luck charm.
Yeah, right. So if you want your Braves to win, take me out to the ballpark.
All right, let's get into Karate Kid. 1984, Columbia Pictures. It was made on an $8 million budget. We were talking about Dirty Dancing last time, was $4.5 million. Karate Kid, only an $8 million budget. Global box office pulled in $130.8 million. Domestic box office, $90.8 million. It was a tremendous success. It was the fourth highest grossing movie of 1984. It came in behind Ghostbusters, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and Gremlins, and then Karate Kid was fourth. It finished just ahead of Police Academy and Footloose. But here's the thing about Karate Kid. It was, a lot of people call it a sleeper hit because it came out 2 weeks after Ghostbusters did. And Ghostbusters was such a phenomenon in 1984. It spent 10 weeks at number 1. Karate Kid never got above the number 3 slot in the U.S. domestic box office rankings on a week-to-week basis because it was trapped behind Ghostbusters.
Well, and let's talk about Ghostbusters, like that cast. Holy cow.
Yeah.
You got Dan Aykroyd, you got Rick Moranis, you got Susan Sarandon. Who else was
Harold Ramis.
Harold Ramis, Bill Murray.
We never mentioned Bill Murray.
Right. So, wow. I until we started preparing for this show, I was like, oh, that was the year that Ghostbusters came. Okay.
Same year.
And Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, you know, like, man, some great movies.
It's a big summer.
In the mid-'80s.
It was a big summer, and Karate Kid was just kind of caught in there. But it had this sustained success week over week over week. It did not lose any viewers. It was keeping this, like, for 3 or 4 weeks. It was finishing at number 3, and its total gross was not going down but by maybe 1%. So it was retaining viewers. It's got a lot of word of mouth, a lot of repeat viewers. So it wound up being a really big hit. Here's something I didn't know until I was doing research. The director is John G. Avildsen. I hope I pronounced that right. He was also the director of Rocky.
I did not know that.
First Rocky movie. And he did the Karate Kid 2 and 3 later. He would go on to do Rocky 5, Lean on Me, 8 Seconds. He's a very accomplished director, had a lot of hit movies. And I'm ashamed to admit, I've never seen Rocky either.
Really?
I've never seen Rocky.
Oh, my goodness. Okay,
Audrey
so
is trying to get me to watch it, and she said, well, put that on your list. No, it was from the 70s, so it doesn't count.
Oh, yeah.
I said, yeah.
So I'm watching Karate Kid in preparation for the show.
Yeah. And
I swear to you, the beach that they used in Karate Kid was the same beach where there's an iconic workout scene in Rocky. Either Rocky or Rocky 2. Maybe I've got my Rockies mixed up. But they do this. Rocky's training for the fight. And, of course, you got your montage, one of many in every film probably during the 80s. And they're exercising, they're getting ready, they're training, and one of the training things is it's got Rocky and Apollo Creed, and they're racing each other on the beach, and you keep seeing over and over they're racing each other. Rocky keeps losing, and finally he beats him, and they look like two dogs just barreling down the beach. And so I was thinking the whole time I'm watching the beach scenes when
you're talking the first time that Daniel and Johnny meet up, really, and he gets beat up the first time. Is that what you're thinking about?
No, it was more during the training sessions, especially
where he's up on the stoop.
And he goes out into the waves, and I don't know how he was supposed to be learning how to kick in the waves. I guess it was all about balance.
Yeah.
It brought to mind. I was like, that's the same beach. I don't know if it is, but
I don't know if it is either. But there's also the scene at the school, or several scenes at the school, where there's a bay of lockers on the outside of the school under like a canopy. And I swear I've seen that in a dozen movies set in the 1980s. That same bay of lockers, that same high school.
Likely.
And of course, with so many movies produced in LA, it probably is the same. But it just looks so familiar. It feels like every movie not made by John Hughes has, because a lot of those were filmed elsewhere, were shot at this same school. So
it's reminding me of early episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. You bring that up and I'm like, wait a minute, they had outside lockers. Did you ever go to a school with outside lockers?
No. Well, I went to a small private school, so
okay,
everything was inside, but no.
Yeah.
I always thought that was so cool, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, oh my God, where are these kids going to school? Like, they've got these expansive lawns and like all these like concrete benches and, kids playing in the background, throwing frisbees or footballs. Like, where was that at my school?
You grew up in Michigan. Of course, you're not going to spend any time outside in the winter. And then I grew up in Tennessee. Winters get pretty cold here, too. I guess in a temperate climate like Southern California, it's just commonplace.
Yeah, and of course through the whole movie, the tournament takes place on December 19th.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look anything like winter.
No, because that's on the poster. There's one scene where they go to the amusement park and there's Christmas decorations up, but outside of that, there's, you wouldn't know. Well, it takes place in LA, so
yeah, Christmas decorations up, the water slide is going, people are enjoying it in the third week of December. Like, that's crazy.
Have you ever been to Los Angeles in the wintertime?
Yes, as a matter of fact, in 2001, the first time I ever flew, we left Detroit Metro in a snowstorm. We landed. We had a connecting flight in St. Paul, Minneapolis. Of course, it was cold as all get out and snows everywhere.
Yeah.
And then we continue on, and it was direct from St. Paul, Minneapolis to L.A. And it's February 3rd. Mm-hmm. We get off the plane and out of the airport, and it's like the sun's out, but there was also a light rain, like a very light rain happening, but it was like 72 degrees. And I'm like, what?
And that's the thing, because the winters are about that way. I've been to LA in the winter 3 or 4 times, and it feels like it's that way every time. It's about 70, 75 degrees in the winter, but then the nights get pretty cold. It gets down to like the 40s.
Yeah, it was. I do remember it was pretty chilly.
So it's not like this tropical climate in Los Angeles year round.
No.
Where you would have a water slide open in December. But they did shoot the movie in the fall, from what I've read. They picked up filming in like around October. So,
yeah. Well, speaking of shooting, so I was noticing watching the opening of the movie, and I swear it was like some kind of old Western, but we're driving across country in a station wagon.
Yeah.
Because all of the sweeping views that they had, and even the music was very like do like the Western type thing, old movies where they're crossing the plains and whatnot. And I was like, well, this is interesting, because we're talking about a kid going out to California from Newark, and
they got across the country a lot faster than the Griswolds did.
Yeah, right.
with much fewer problems.
Right. Although they did have to get the car rolling started a couple of times.
That's true. And here's a plot hole I noticed, and we'll get to the cast and everything in a minute. But there is a plot hole that I noticed and maybe it was done on purpose. I don't know. But his mom is moving from Newark to Reseda, California to work for a computer company. And then in the movie, she has a job as a waitress.
So I was thinking that too as I'm watching the movie. So
am I missing something? Yeah.
So I think actually when they first arrive and he's bringing in his bike and his heavy suitcase, and the other kid, Freddie, greets him because he actually kicks open the door and knocks Freddie open, right? Because his slick karate skills at that point.
That he learned at the Y.
That he learned at the Y and trains out of a book. So they're talking about it, and he's like, yeah, we moved across country because my mom's working for some rocket company or something like that. And I'm like, okay. And then you get to that scene you're referring to, and it looks like she's a waitress, but I kept watching like, okay, she's not really doing waitressy stuff. I think what they were trying to set up was that they were there and she was having a meeting. Okay. because it looked like the woman trying to get her attention in the back didn't have menus in her hand, but had like file folders for a meeting. Because I thought the same thing. I'm like, wait a minute, I thought she was working for some like big company, like
tech company.
Yeah, something big, a lot bigger than being a waitress. Like, how do you move across country to become a waitress?
Well, they did. Apparently. Ralph Macchio, of course, plays Daniel
the
LaRusso.
Ageless Wonder.
Yeah. I saw him. He was at the Braves game during the World Series.
Oh, get out.
Yeah, and they showed him down there. Of course, to me, and never having seen Karate Kid prior to that point, to me, Ralph Macchio is from My Cousin Vinny.
Oh, yeah,
which is
yeah.
one of my favorite movies of all time. And which, again, Audrey made me watch many years after it was released.
It sounds like you need to start listening to your wife on what movies to watch.
Yep. She would tell you the same thing. But he has become known as Daniel LaRusso. And
oh, yeah.
And I read something the other day. He has one son, and he named him Daniel.
Oh, cool.
In real life. Yeah,
that's
after
awesome.
the character. Pat Morita plays Mr. Miyagi. Of course, I remember him from Happy Days.
Okay.
Where he was Arnold, the owner of the... Did you ever watch Happy Days?
I vaguely remember episodes here and there of Happy Days, but I do know that he was in that.
Arnold's was the restaurant where the majority of the scenes took place in Happy Days, and Pat Morita played Arnold, who owned the restaurant for part of the series, and he was replaced by a different character named Al later in the series.
Oh, okay.
So that's where I knew him from, and I've seen him he was in so many things. He passed away almost 20 years ago now.
Has it been that long?
I think it was 2005. I'll look that up here in a second. But,
oh my goodness, yeah.
He's been gone a while. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me. You know what? I'm going to look it up right now. We've got time.
Okay.
We're not beholden to any clocks here on the podcast.
Yeah, there are no sponsors going, hey.
He passed away exactly. November 24, 2005. So not long ago.
Wow.
Was the anniversary.
Oh my goodness.
18 years
I can't believe it was that long. It doesn't feel that long ago.
No, it doesn't, because it felt to me like he just passed away.
Yeah.
But yeah, 2000.
So I wanted to mention, I was thinking about this ahead of the show. So one of the other movies on your list, Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah.
So a character in that movie is I don't know if they did it on purpose. I bet you they did. Is a spoof on Mr. Miyagi.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
I mean, it's the same kind of same kind of character, but he was like this. He was like this stoner, but he had this same in your Karate Kid where he's got the maintenance shop and he's just in there, and that was the same dark area that we are introduced to the same character in Revenge of the Nerds. So when you get to that movie, you'll see what I'm talking about.
I'll make the connection.
Yeah, you'll make the connection.
Elizabeth Shue. I had no idea Elizabeth Shue was in this movie.
First crush.
Really?
First crush, yeah. So
because of this movie, or Adventures in Babysitting, or...
Oh my God, Adventures in Babysitting. That's right. She was in that.
She was the star of that. And I think that's another one on my list. I've seen pieces of that movie, but not in full.
It's been so long since I've seen that movie, but I know what you're talking about. No, so it was definitely the Karate Kid, where it was like, okay, this is my first crush. I mean, she's a beautiful young woman.
Yeah.
And at the time of the filming, so it kills me because at the time of the filming, Ralph Macchio and Elizabeth Shue, they're 2 years apart, and he was 23, she was 21. And
they're playing what, 16?
15, because you remember in the movie he got his driver's license.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So and we won't even start to get in on the underage drinking in the movie as well.
It was the 80s, man.
It was the 80s, and that's what
time.
I thought when I thought about that. So, but yeah, I remember her being my first celebrity crush.
I first became acquainted with Elizabeth Shue from Back to the Futures Part 2 and 3. She played Jennifer. She replaced Claudia Wells in the role.
Right.
And they had to scale back the role of Jennifer. That they never really had plans for the role of Jennifer for the sequels. So if you'll notice, she's at the very beginning of Part 2, and you see her in the future. And then you don't see her again until the very end of Part 3.
Oh, wow, okay.
But Elizabeth Shue played the replacement Jennifer.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Back
Okay.
to the Future Part 2 and 3. Then you've got William Zabka, who played Johnny Lawrence, our main antagonist in the movie, he hasn't really done a whole lot since then until he has reprised that role in Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
For me to say. But has he done really anything else?
Oh gosh,
I don't think so. Like, he doesn't look like somebody who is super. Okay, let's see. I'm looking at his credits now. After Karate Kid was his first movie, he was in Just One of the Guys. He was in National Lampoon's European Vacation. Of course, Karate Kids 2 and 3. He was in Back to School, the Rodney Dangerfield film.
Oh wow!
In 1986. And then he did some sporadic stuff through the 90s. Nothing really. It looks like a lot of straight-to-video stuff, TV movies. He was in Hot Tub Time Machine, probably just as a gag.
Yeah.
Which that's a great movie, by the way, if you've never seen it.
I haven't.
And then he kind of stopped acting until Cobra Kai came around in 2018. And now he is not only the star of that show, but the executive producer. Have you watched Cobra Kai at all?
I have not. I do want to watch it for the nostalgia about it.
I've heard so many people say, "Oh, you've got to see it." And I'm like, "I've never seen the Karate Kid." Well,
I would have no context.
Now I don't have that. Of course, now I would have to watch the sequels.
Yep.
And I would have to watch. Would I have to watch the one with Hilary Swank as well? I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah, and don't forget Will Smith's son.
Oh, they made another one, didn't they?
Yeah, because Jackie Chan was the trainer.
And they're making another one.
Are they?
With Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio. That came out in the news just a few days ago.
Oh, stop it. That's awesome.
And I did not research that, so I don't have notes on it. I might look it up a little bit later on.
Well, when you talk about William Zabka, I think about in his career, I think about a Will Wheaton type of character. Will Wheaton was so.
I know who Will Wheaton is, but I mean, how so?
Yeah, well, I mean, at least for me, like the only way I really knew Will Wheaton until The Big Bang Theory came out, back in the late 2000s.
Yeah.
Was Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Wesley Crusher.
As Wesley Crusher. That's right. But I never really saw him in anything after that. Now he probably was in a lot of stuff, and I just didn't.
He was in Stand By Me.
Okay,
he was one of the main.
That's right. That's right. I think
that's
I've watched that once.
How he became known was from Stand By Me, and that's how what led to Star Trek.
Yeah. But yeah, I was just thinking as you were kind of rattling off Zabka's credits. Another actor that kind of reminded me of that, but then came to more prominence later in another show.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd like to see Cobra Kai because I think it would bring back a lot of memories.
It's available now on Netflix.
That's
I don't
right.
know, 3 or 4 seasons, 5, several seasons now.
Yeah, we're not sponsored by Netflix,
No.
but hey, Netflix, if you're listening.
And that's how I viewed Karate Kid. That's where it's currently streaming as of the recording of this podcast in early December.
It's a Netflix series, right?
Yeah,
they produce
it.
it.
Cobra Kai is. I keep saying Cobra Kai.
Cobra Kai. It's in one of the other multiverses.
Is that in the porn spinoff or something? It's got a different name.
This is quickly going off the rails.
All right, let's get back to it. It's a very basic story. I mean,
very basic.
Very basic plot to this film. New kid in town, doesn't fit in, quickly finds a love interest that brings up the ire of her ex-boyfriend. We're talking about Daniel finding Allie, and then Johnny not being happy about that.
Allie with an I.
Allie with an I. So Johnny just starts beating up Daniel. He's part of an aggressive karate dojo called Cobra Kai, and they bully Daniel mercilessly. I mean, they beat him up every opportunity they get.
Every time they see him.
Every time they see him, they beat him up. So Daniel decides he needs to learn karate, which he knows a little bit of from the Y and from this book. And how convenient that this guy who works at his apartment complex just happens to be this karate master. Like, he's an Okinawan immigrant. He knows all this stuff. That's Mr. Miyagi. He mentors him. He teaches him karate, and that culminates in a showdown at an area karate tournament. And, they wouldn't meet in the quarterfinals, Steve. They had to meet in the finals. That's the only way it would end.
Yeah.
They had, it was set up perfectly. It's what a weird draw that Johnny and Daniel would wind up on opposite sides of the bracket and find themselves facing off in the final.
Well, because if you remember, he faced off with multiple Cobra Kai.
He took on all of
people. Yeah, he took on all of them. So you're right. It's weird that they would be on opposite sides of the bracket, given that all his other Cobra Kai, members had already gone
on his side.
On his side, yeah. So I don't know.
It's almost like it was scripted to end that way or something. But no.
Very.
Here's the thing about the movie. Here's the thing. I hated the way this movie ended. And not because of what happened, not because of the plot, but it's like there's the iconic scene where you see him get up on one leg and kick Johnny in the face, and then the tournament's over. Daniel wins, and Johnny's like, "Good job, kid," and he holds up the trophy, and then it's like the end.
Yeah, it's like this shot that goes into Mr. Miyagi's face, like very proud, and then roll credits.
Yeah, there's nothing beyond. There's no epilogue.
And I couldn't remember that when I was watching the movie again. I was like, okay, so what are the scenes that kind of bring us down from all of that, and then we go off and into the sunset of the beach scene or whatever.
Yeah,
and there wasn't. It was just credits.
Imagine if Star Wars ended with the explosion of the Death Star and nothing after it. Just like. Directed by George Lucas, Right. You need that. You need to be brought down a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I did not like.
Yeah, because the whole movie was about getting to that point.
Yeah.
And so you get to that point, and you're like, all right, I'm ready to be let down, from that before I, get up from my seat. Think about, 1984. You're in the theater. You got your popcorn. What's left of it.
Yeah.
It's credits.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a great movie. Let's go.
Did we even see a kiss with Daniel and Allie? We didn't see his mom. We didn't see.
Yeah, not at the end. There was when he first got the car from Miyagi.
Right. No, I'm talking about at the end.
Oh no. No.
Did I miss that, or did it just not happen?
No, it was the scene where they were all celebrating in the middle, and of course the guy he's been fighting with the whole movie comes up and like, "Good job, here's your trophy, and you're the best now." And it's like, it took that long for us to like. And not only that long, but like it was that quick that he just like, yeah, we're good now.
Yeah.
Good job for beating me. No,
it doesn't make sense. But I think we saw a little bit of that in the film. You see Johnny hesitant to fight dirty when John Kreese tells him sweep the leg.
Let's talk about
he's not telling him to literally sweep the leg. He's basically saying fight dirty, do what you have to do to take this guy out. And you can sense some hesitance with Johnny.
Yeah.
When he gets that directive.
Yeah. Well, how horrible? Speaking of that, how horrible were the adults in this film?
Well, just John, right?
No.
Okay.
No, you think about the scene at the restaurant when they were at the club and she's dancing with Johnny, and he's kind of come back through the kitchen at the restaurant.
Yeah.
And then like he runs into the waiter and he's got all that spaghetti over his completely white outfit.
Yeah.
So that they put that in there because they were going to do the spaghetti thing and it had to really pop, right?
Yeah.
But like the entire dining room of adults is just busting up laughing at this poor kid, that just got plastered by the waiter.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of other scenes, but particularly with the Cobra Kai leader, John
Kreese.
Yeah, John Kreese. The way he treated his kids in the dojo and the way he responded to the threats from, or not the threat, but like when they first meet where they're saying, okay, here's the challenge, but yeah, you see that amongst multiple of the kids, where there's hesitancy, especially in some of the bullying
penultimate
scenes.
Fight when he's directed, I can't remember the character's name, to basically take out Daniel's leg.
Oh yeah.
And fights dirty and gets disqualified on purpose. He even says, "I'll get disqualified."
Right.
Do it.
And then as soon as he does it and Daniel goes down to the mat, you can see him. He's right on top of him. Go, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it.
Yeah.
And immediately feeling that regret, but because he's been, brainwashed into this Cobra Kai mentality of no mercy.
But even then, prior to that in the movie, when they're bullying him, they're all dicks.
Oh yeah.
Like there's no mercy at all. It's just we're better than you. We're going to beat you up. That when they're riding the motorbikes and they run him off a hill.
Yeah.
And he legitimately crashes his bike.
Yeah.
The first time he lied about crashing his bike when he got beat
Right.
up. But he legitimately crashes his bike. And for no other reason than they just ride up beside him and, hey, it's Daniel. Let's run him off the road.
Yeah. Well, there was a little bit, too, though, after the Halloween party, right before Mr. Miyagi comes in and finally shows that he knows, karate.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. That's the same.
Yeah. So they're all beating him up, but there's this one kid who's like, "Hey, he's had enough. Let's go. No mercy." And they continue to beat him until Mr. Miyagi comes in and he
Cleans house.
Yeah, he cleans house. So
as they would say in professional wrestling,
right?
Business is about to pick up. So, what's your connection to this film? What made you fall in love with it when you were a kid?
I mean, it really was.
It Elizabeth Shue? Was that the reason you watched it?
No, it was the storyline.
Yeah.
It was the storyline. I mean, if we're being transparent, I was kind of the Daniel, growing up, where I'd find myself in situations where, I was being bullied. Mm-hmm. And so I would definitely would have liked to have a Mr. Miyagi in my life at that time. So the character and the story kind of resonated with me, and the whole idea that he could come out on top. I always wanted to come out on top, and so I was drawn to a lot of movies where there was a hero aspect where the whole movie he's down and out and struggling against the man or the dojo in this case. And so I think that's really kind of how it stuck with me. I don't remember actually seeing it in the theater. I think my first movie I remember seeing in the theater was Back to the Future. Yeah. But the
Which
Karate
was next year.
Right. But the Karate Kid, I don't know, it was one of those movies that kind of felt personal. And I think that's why I latched onto it early on.
So when you think about Karate Kid today,
yeah,
or maybe before you watched it,
right,
before it was fresh on your mind, what's the first mental image that comes to mind when you?
Oh, the crane kick
movie. The what?
The crane kick.
The crane kick.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I make jokes even today, about like if you're getting in like this fake fight or whatever, and you're like, come on, let's go. And I do the crane pose, and I'm like, look, I've watched Karate Kid 27 times. Let's go. And I'm in the crane kick, and I probably would fall down if I tried to do it now. But yeah, that's the iconic. The iconic scene for me, first thing pops into my mind is
20 seconds before the movie ends.
Right? Yeah. So,
well, I'll say this. I'll be real. I was a little bored by this movie. And part of the reason why, it's too freaking long. It's 2 hours and 7 minutes long. Like, this should have been an hour and 30-minute movie. I don't think there's any reason this movie should have been 2 hours and 7 minutes in length.
Yeah, there could have been some cut. But I was thinking about that as I was watching it. It's just it was just a long story arc, and you wanted to continue.
Simple plot.
It's a simple plot, but I think what they were trying to do is really they really wanted you to be grabbed by the Daniel story, and then the whole training and the connection that Daniel and Mr. Miyagi make,
right?
And of course, like that whole lead up before they actually start doing the karate, right? Paint the fence and wax on, wax off, and up, down, up, down, like. He's just wandering off, and you're like, oh my God, he's just making this kid do all this stuff. And he even mentions it. He's like, I'm your slave, and finally he starts to train him, and he gets it, like it's all that muscle memory stuff.
And that's what I was going to say. That bit to me was a little uncomfortable to watch. that he was doing so many menial tasks, like wax on, wax off. We all know that line. And then the painting of the fence and the painting of the house and
the sand the deck.
Waxing of the cars and the sanding of the deck.
Yeah.
And it was just like, good Lord. Like it was, I'm thinking.
Day after day after day.
Where is Daniel's mom in any of this? Of course, it was the 80s. Our parents just let us go do whatever. They didn't care, it seems like.
Oh, yeah. Curfew was when the lights came on.
Curfew, pretty much. Curfew was, you better be home in time for dinner or you're not going to eat.
Yeah.
So
But, I mean, seeing the dynamic between him and his mom this whole time, like, she was like, yeah, go do whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Like, because I think part of it was her, and we even get a little bit of that in the movie, part of it was her feeling guilty that she had ripped him away from, you know, his life in Newark and brought him all across country. And it was just the two. Like, there wasn't even family, because they talk a couple times about, oh, that reminds me of Uncle so-and-so or whatever. And, you know, it's just the two of them. So I think she was like, yeah, go do whatever. It's okay that you're, you know, at this old man's place from 6 a.m. until like 10 at night after dark painting his, you know, fence or whatever. But all that was, I think, just more and more of building up to that penultimate scene at the end, that then left you wanting more and went straight to credits.
Yeah. And what was the point of everybody mispronouncing Miyagi's name? Because Daniel says Miyagi several times, and then he corrects him. No, it's Miyagi. Okay.
Yeah.
And then other characters mispronounce it. And even at the tournament, on the loudspeaker, the announcer says Miyagi.
Yeah.
And there's no payoff for that. Like, is it just, I don't know, people not familiar with the Okinawan culture or whatever? I don't understand what that whole.
So I think it was a progression of the respect that Daniel has for Mr. Miyagi.
Okay.
Because at first it's just Miyagi, right? Like he just doesn't know how to pronounce it. He's some dumb kid, dumb U.S. kid, not really understanding the differences in culture, right? But eventually we see that he says Mr. Miyagi, and that built into the tournament, and the announcer guy saying Mr. Miyagi-Do, and he goes up and says, no, you're saying it wrong. You need to respect my teacher. It's Miyagi. So, because you see that earlier in the film, and you can see that Mr. Miyagi is proud, not so proud that he really got upset, but he definitely corrected him, and you see that progression of respect.
Okay.
So that's what I think that was about.
Then Daniel lies. He lies to the tournament official and says that Miyagi doesn't speak English, and he needs Allie there as his translator.
And the official goes, "Thank you," and Miyagi goes, "Welcome."
Did you see the look on the official's face when he said welcome? He went like, I just got had.
Wait a minute. And I love right before that when they're registering him and they're like, well, what belt, does he have? And he's like, well, he's black belt. And he kind of pulls Allie over, and he's distracting the official, and pulls out the black belt from the bag right there. I thought that was kind of funny.
Breaking the rules, man. The good guys are breaking the rules.
That's right.
Anti-heroes in 1984. Let's talk. You were talking about the respect. Let's talk about that relationship, Daniel and Miyagi. You really, what you have here is a boy without a father, and a father without a son.
Yeah.
And that's the bond that they eventually form, is a very father-son bond. Because, it's said that Daniel's father is dead. And then Miyagi, it's revealed that his wife died at childbirth along with the baby.
Yeah.
And so you've got two people with a common need to fill a hole that both of them can fill for each other. And that really is the central piece of the whole story, I think, is the relationship with Daniel and Miyagi. It's not about Daniel winning the tournament.
Oh, no.
It's all about that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think going back to your point about, how long the movie was, that's why we had so much with, Daniel and Mr. Miyagi was building that relationship and like really seeing all of it. It wasn't just, it didn't seem as forced because they didn't have to compress it. Mm-hmm. Right. So it was just all,
that's fair.
We got to see of the long, probably what would have been the natural progression of that relationship. We got to see a lot more detail.
No, and I complained about how long the movie was. When I looked at it on Netflix and I hit play and it was like 2 hours and 7 minutes, I went, holy crap. I got to devote 2 hours. I was thinking an hour and a half. But, you're right. When I was talking to JR about Dirty Dancing, I was like, there's 20 minutes you could have cut out of Dirty Dancing. Mm-hmm. I don't think you could have. There's nothing really that I look at this movie and go, there's 20 minutes you could have cut out. Because it's all fairly important. Yeah. Even though, like you said, the relationship is complex, the story isn't, but it's that patience building.
Yes.
Which I guess is key to karate. If you want to draw a
balance
correlation there, balance. Yeah.
Yeah.
So so I'm here. I am.
You can probably cut about like 5 minutes off of the opening, the opening credits when they're driving across country. Like, I mean, we could have just gotten in a plane. Like, why did we have to go in this jalopy of a station wagon? Which apparently, as you watch,
to have the bike somewhere.
Oh, that's true. That's true. You had to put it on top, which was funny too because, like, you watch the movie the rest of the way through, and they never use the back seat. It's always the front seat. Even when they take Allie on the date, when she drives both Allie and Daniel to the arcade, and they're both in the front seat. And it's like, wait, this is a big station wagon. Why aren't we using the whole car?
Is it one of those station wagons like my kindergarten teacher had where you could sit in the back facing out the back?
Oh, it most likely was.
I loved those.
Oh my gosh. Those were the days. Like, I mean, who from our era, who doesn't remember, feeling the rush and the fear of traffic coming at you, as you're facing backwards.
I loved sitting in the back seat of those. And I just remember my kindergarten teacher was the only person I knew that had one. And occasionally, like if we were going on a field trip in kindergarten, I would always be like, I want to ride in the back seat.
Yeah.
So I could face out the back.
Not knowing how dangerous it was, because no crash test would ever save anybody at this point in that position.
Let's talk about the conflict between the protagonist and the antagonist. You've basically got Daniel versus Cobra Kai as a unit. And like I said, they're just jerks to him. Like there's no real justification for their bullying.
No, we never get that.
No.
Other than they have a terrible teacher for their karate.
Exactly.
But there's no like, oh, he's down and out because he's got a drunk father and a missing mother or something.
Yeah. It's just the guy who is teaching them he's a butthole.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Although Daniel does get a little bit of revenge when he puts the hose over the toilet stall and drenches Johnny.
Oh yeah,
dance.
Yeah,
yeah. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah, and then he runs out of there in his shower. That's another thing that was funny about that. He's got this shower costume, right?
Yeah.
And the way he gets back at Johnny is by putting this hose over the top of his head,
dousing him with water like a shower. And that leads into my next thing. We talk about the growth of the main character. Daniel is he's shy. At the beginning of the movie, he's very much, and we don't know about his life in New Jersey, if he was an extrovert or if he had a lot of friends. He mentions that when he kind of blows up at his mom, that you took me away from my life that I knew to move out here to California and to start over. But he's very shy, and he wants to hide from Cobra Kai every chance he gets. That's why he gets the shower costume. He says to Miyagi, I would like to go as the Invisible Man. And Miyagi doesn't understand what he means, and he says, no, I just don't want to be seen. So he builds him a shower costume, which is hilarious that Allie knows exactly who is in that shower costume.
Yeah.
She says, oh, I know who that is.
It was hiding in plain sight, too, because it was not it was such a conspicuous.
It was so loud.
It was very loud. It's like, okay, who's this guy, other than the chicken, right, that walks through. It was the loudest costume at the party.
Yeah. But he wants to hide. He's running from Cobra Kai the whole first half of the movie until he gets that confidence, and then he faces them head on and beats them all in the tournament. So that's a lot of the character growth, and we talked about the relationship with Miyagi as well.
Yeah,
being a big part of that character growth.
Well,
and
has this
grow?
Yeah, exactly.
Miyagi and Daniel both grow.
Yeah. It's interesting because at first we see some swagger from Daniel early on in the movie.
Yeah.
Especially, you know, that beach scene where he's getting introduced to all the characters,
playing soccer,
right? Playing soccer on the beach, and then the campfires, and you know, getting introduced to Allie, and of course, you know, Johnny comes up and steals the radio from her and won't give it back, and Daniel's like
it with his motorbike.
Yeah, but Daniel's like, well, I know karate, not knowing where these kids come from, right? So he's just going to be like, well, I'm going to save the damsel in distress, and you know, show off my YMCA karate skills, and then he gets humbled.
He gets his ass kicked.
And yeah, he gets his ass kicked, and he continues to be humbled throughout the movie, you know, every time he runs into them.
Yeah.
You know. So I get the sense that he was like extroverted, but he definitely gets humbled throughout the movie. And I think that's part of the whole, you know, all the different things that Mr. Miyagi had him do to start training, right? It's more humbling. It's more like, all right, let's break you down before we start to build you up.
Mm-hmm. And and Daniel even asked Miyagi at one point, when am I going to get to punch?
Yeah.
He wants the offense. And Miyagi's like, no. You need to learn balance. You need to learn defense first.
Right. And karate is about defense.
Exactly. And that's what he's, you know, obviously we know now that's why he's doing the painting up and down. He's teaching him this muscle memory of these defense moves, which obviously comes into play a little bit later on. But that's funny, that moment when it all clicks for Daniel.
Yeah.
When they're training and Miyagi throws the punch or whatever, and Daniel knows exactly what to do, and you just see it click in his mind. He's like, oh, that's why I had to wax on, wax off.
Yeah.
So well, let's talk about the quotes.
Okay.
Wax on, wax off. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows sweep the leg.
Yeah.
And there's so many memes and everything. So I just want to get that out of the way. When I had never seen Karate Kid before, like I said before, 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing I always thought of was wax on, wax off, because I've just seen and heard that so much.
Right.
And I knew what it meant. I knew that it meant like a patience building type of thing, but I didn't know that was part of the defense mechanisms that he was teaching him. So now I'm in on the joke.
Yeah.
I get it. Soundtrack.
Well, let's do some more quotes.
Let's do it.
I was kind of intentionally trying to listen for some that I thought were fun.
Go for it.
And early on, when he learns of his, when Mr. Miyagi learns of Daniel's interest in the young Allie, you know, he goes, "To make honey, young bee need young flower, not old prune." and some of the other, I don't know if you could call this a quote, but they're talking about they're talking about Daniel going into this situation, and he goes, "I'll get killed if I show up there," and Mr. Miyagi goes, "Get killed anyway," whether he does or not, you know.
And I remember the one where Daniel, because Daniel wants that status of what belt am I?
Yeah.
Because he says that's a big thing. I knew when I was a kid. I didn't take karate, but I knew a bunch of kids who did.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a brown belt, I'm a green belt, I'm a black belt, or whatever. So that's a status thing.
Yeah.
And Daniel even asked Miyagi something about what belt would it be? And Miyagi says, in Okinawa, belt mean no need rope, hold up pants.
Yeah. And initially he goes, "Canvas belt, JCPenney, $3.98."
And that's the thing, is that they did not want to cast Pat Morita in this movie because he was known primarily for comedy. They wanted Pat Morita, they wanted a real serious actor to play Mr. Miyagi, and they didn't know that Pat Morita had those chops because he was so known for Happy Days and various comedic roles, specifically Happy Days.
Yeah.
And it turns out that Mr. Miyagi is really the only comic relief in the whole movie because of all of these little quotes that he had.
He really is. Yeah, you're right.
And the trying to catch the fly with the chopsticks was hilarious.
Yeah,
I've never seen that somewhere before. But
Yeah. And of course, Daniel comes in and he's like, "Oh, look, Mr. Miyagi, I got it." And he gets up disgusted and he walks away and he goes, "Beginner's luck." And another classic one for me from the movie is when he gives him the car after the birthday and he's kind of driving off the property, and Mr. Miyagi goes, "Banzai," and they keep going back and forth, "Banzai, banzai, banzai," and I'm thinking, that was the birth of What's Up.
Maybe.
I don't know, maybe, but like if you go back and watch that little sequence there, and they do it like 4 or 5 times, it's just back and forth, banzai, and it gets more and more aggressive each time. And I was like, no.
Maybe it was.
Yeah.
Maybe it was. Soundtrack. There's 2 songs that are really most associated with this movie. Cruel Summer, Bananarama, makes an appearance about halfway through, and I was looking up some of the history of that song because I'm thinking, okay, was that song already a hit when it was in the movie, or did the movie make it a hit? The answer is both. It was Bananarama is a UK group.
Okay.
It was a hit in the UK, and when it was put into this movie is when it got to be known internationally. So the U.S. market was introduced to Cruel Summer from Karate Kid, which apparently doesn't even take place in the summertime.
It was cruel coming out of the summer.
Yeah. But Bananarama refused to allow that song to be included on the soundtrack for whatever reason. I think they wanted it on their own album instead, try to drive their own album sales. So they did not allow it to be on the soundtrack record for the movie, but it became a top 10 hit. And then You're the Best is the song that everybody equates to the movie because it comes right there at the tournament scene at the end. I could not find anywhere where that song had even been released as a single. It had no chart success at all.
Maybe it was strictly for the movie.
I think it was strictly for the movie, but I've heard that song forever.
Oh, yeah.
But and it has lasted through the years. It's not like a heavy play on Spotify playlists, unless you're thinking like movies from the 80s. It's not. It never was a big hit on classic hits radio stations where I used to work. Like, we never played that song, and I guess because it was never officially released as a single. Interestingly enough,
I did not know that.
I didn't either until this morning. You think the movie's aged well?
I mean, I didn't see anything that was particularly out of order. It's not very diverse.
It's not diverse, even with an Asian American lead.
Even with an Asian American lead, and I think there was a lot of play up of the whole language, barrier, being an Asian American trying to speak English, and there's all that accent, that heavy accent that gets in the way. I just don't know if that would play well today.
If let's just remove all the sequels from existence, like the Karate Kid does not exist in the world, and they were going to make it for the first time here in late 2023, early 2024. What would have to be changed? You're right. The cast would have to be much more diverse, especially set in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And
well, for sure, how long it was. So I'll go back to your point about it being too long. There's no way, if that was brand new now, that audiences would sit through 2 hours and 5 minutes of that much character building.
It would peak at 100 minutes.
Yeah.
An hour 40.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think if they made that movie today as is? If they just put out that movie, it had been sitting in the can for 40 years. Oh, here's this new movie we made in 1984 and we never released. How would it be accepted today, in today's world?
Straight to Netflix.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And I think it has not aged particularly well. It's definitely a product of its time. All these movies are. That's a given. But it's kind of cheesy.
Yeah, there's a lot of cheese in the movie.
There's a lot of cheese in that movie.
Yeah.
And I think it would have to be a little more gritty today if it were made.
A lot more action sequences too.
Definitely more action sequences.
I think you'd have fewer fights between Daniel and the Cobra Kai folks, but they would be more intense. There'd be a lot more choreographed and a lot tighter. Think of like a John Wick fighting scene or something like that. I would think that they would really focus around that action, those action pieces.
Yeah. Audrey and I were talking last night, or maybe even before I watched it, and I mentioned, it's like, well, we did Never Ending Story on the show 2 episodes ago, and then Dirty Dancing is a very adult movie. I was like, Karate Kid's kind of a kid's movie. And she said, no, it's not. And I was like, is it not a kid's movie? So I'm still kind of caught in between. I think the story is it's teen, adult, but it just feels like, to me feels like a movie made for kids.
Yeah, I don't know that it's like young kids, but definitely like the preteens and the teens.
Yeah.
And then probably I'd say the young 20s, you know, you'd be watching that movie going, oh man, that was my high school life just, 4 years ago. You know.
It's interesting about the casting, and I don't know. I don't watch a lot of teen movies now, but it seems like they cast teenage actors and actresses to play teenagers now more than they did.
Oh yeah, I was thinking that, and that's why I brought up earlier the fact that Ralph Macchio, 23, and Elizabeth Shue, 21, but they're playing these 15-year-olds. Yeah. And quite honestly, I mean, they don't look 23 and 21.
No, they don't.
Maybe more Elizabeth Shue, but Ralph Macchio was super young.
Yeah. Late bloomer.
Yeah, oh, very much so. And I was talking with Beth, my wife, about this. She was kind of watching, part of the movie with me last night, and she's like, he absolutely doesn't look any different now than he did then. Like she's like, he makes Paul Rudd look like the Undertaker.
I would think he looks like a very guy who's very young in his 50s for sure. Like he still has a baby face.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say he still looks like exactly.
No,
like
but when you see him, you're like, okay, that's Ralph Macchio.
So he's got to be in
he's
his early
62.
62.
He's 62. Yeah.
Wow. But he does look very young for 62.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Told you I saw him at a baseball game a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
that was pretty cool. All right. So that's going to wrap up our discussion on Karate Kid. Anything else you want to bring up?
I mean, it's
Something
just one
I missed, maybe.
No, it was just one of those 80s movies that really kind of made you feel good.
Yeah.
That was a lot of those movies, I think, in the 80s was really about, feeling good about, your circumstances, even if they may not have been the best.
Yeah.
I
would give this probably 3 out of 5 stars. Looking at it from my perspective, I have no nostalgia for it. Obviously, that's kind of the whole point of the podcast. Is that I have no nostalgia for any of these very highly nostalgic movies.
You're video oblivious to it.
Exactly, but I think I would give it 3 stars because, like I said, I was a little bit bored by it. I did think the running time was very long, even though you've convinced me that it needed to be since we've started talking about this. But I was just. And I thought, it's kind of cheesy. And it's one that I was really looking forward to. It was one of the first ones I put down on the list when I was thinking of movies I want to cover.
Yeah.
Because I know how iconic it is.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one I've gotten made fun of over the years for never seeing. How could you have never seen The Karate Kid?
Right? Like the Karate Kid. It's the Karate.
I just never saw it.
Banzai.
All right. Should I watch the sequels?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think I need to watch the sequels just as research for the Cobra Kai series.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
because
you would miss a lot if you didn't.
I do. I've heard that's very, very good.
Yeah.
And I've heard a lot of people, I thankfully.
I haven't seen it, but I would imagine that you would miss a lot if you didn't know all of the story.
Maybe we should do a Cobra Kai watch-along podcast.
Oh, there you go.
We watch each episode and then discuss it like this, like we did this.
Oh, that'd be cool.
We might.
Yeah.
I wouldn't count on it, but we might.
Yeah, don't hold your breath, guys.
Tell me, let's plug your stuff before you get out of here. Tell me, you're a woodworker. Let's talk about your woodworking company. Let's send people there.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I mean, let's do a little tie-in here. They had the bonsai trees, right?
They did have the bonsai trees.
Yeah.
So technically, they did a little bit of woodworking.
Technically, yeah, as they were shaping the trees. I don't know that I could make anything out of a bonsai tree, but yeah, I do woodworking. Make a lot of small crafts out of my home shop in my garage. I've kind of taken over, and my wife can't park in anymore. That's a point of contention every now and then when it comes up. / every day. But yeah, I really enjoy it. I've actually been only doing woodworking about as long as I've known you.
Yeah.
2 things not really related,
no.
But
coincidentally.
Yeah, coincidentally. So, yeah, I do woodworking under the auspices of 467 Woodworking. 467 standing for, you would think there might be an area code or, part of a zip code or something like that. But for me, it's it relates to a Bible verse dealing with anxiety and depression, something that I struggle with. And I mean, like I said earlier in the podcast, I think that's where my connection with Karate Kid really kind of stuck, was having that having been bullied and feeling those types of things. So the woodworking for me, whenever I go out in my shop, that's kind of like my piece, almost like when Mr. Miyagi is pruning and shaping his bonsai trees.
There you go. How can they find you to buy some stuff and see your catalog?
So I'm on Instagram at 467 Woodworking. I have a Facebook page, 467 Woodworking, and we have a website, 467woodworking.com.
There you go. Go check it out. See his stuff.
All right,
Hopefully,
cool. Thanks.
I made at least one sale for you.
Yeah, right. We've got some cool stuff on there. I don't have anything Karate Kid themed yet, but maybe we'll get into that.
Maybe a special for Video Oblivious listeners only, a custom Karate Kid something or other.
Or maybe a custom Videoblivious pen.
Oh, well, we'll see about that.
Yeah.
We'll see. Thank you for coming on.
Hey, man, thank you for having me on. This was so much fun.
It's been a blast.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Video Oblivious. And stick around, another new episode with a different movie is just a few days away. Thanks to my guests for being a part of the show. And if you'd like to be a part of the show, send me an email, zbennett@gmail.com. That's zbennett@gmail.com. Maybe there's a movie you love that I've never seen. Send me an email, we'll connect, and we might even talk about it here on the podcast. And don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, whatever your platform allows. Give us a good rating if you really enjoyed this podcast. And thanks again for listening to Video Oblivious.